say we shall overcome someday. Deep in my heart, I do believe we shall. Come on, clap those hands. Someday, oh, we shall.
To another live broadcast of the Rainbow Push Coalition. Listen, you still have time to get here. 930 East 50th Street. Call somebody, tweet somebody, text somebody. Let them know that the push is still on.
I do believe that we shall. Come on, let's sing it. Well, we shall. Somebody say that we shall. I believe that we shall overcome someday. Deep in my heart, I do believe that we shall overcome someday.
Turn us up right now on your radio. Turn us up right now on your television. We are live all over the world. Call us right now, 773-256-2775. 773-256-2775. Our founder, our president, the Reverend Jesse Lewis Jackson Sr. would love to hear from you today. We are live right now on the Impact Network. We are live right now on AM 1690 and iHeartRadio. And we are streaming live right now at rainbowpush.org. We are grateful to each of you who watch us tune in each and every week in your homes, your automobiles, your places of business. Wherever you're kind enough to tune in, we thank God for you. Especially to our international audience, those of you who are watching us right now in Spain, in Kenya, in Norway, in the United Kingdom, and in Canada, we thank God for you. And those of you who are watching us here in the United States, especially in our satellite cities of New York City, Washington, D.C., Atlanta, Detroit, and Silicon Valley, we thank God for you. Listen, we want to dedicate this broadcast to a member of our own staff, our state political director, Ms. C. Betty Magnus, and her family on the passing of her brother. Today, we're also celebrating the 90th birthday of one of our members, longtime members, Miss Pearl Nelson. We're celebrating her 90th birthday today, so happy birthday, Mrs. Nelson. Listen, next week you need to be here, 930 East 50th Street, all day. We're going to celebrate our children and send them back to school with our annual back to school rally. We just don't give them a book bag and some notebooks, but we set their mind frame. We bring their parents. They take the back to school pledge, the parent teacher pledge. So you need to be here next week, 9:30 a.m. for our annual back to school rally right here all day at the Rainbow Push Coalition. Listen, we're going to hear from this dynamic music ministry under the leadership of Brother Maurice Mahan. They're going to come back with one more selection, so hear them now as they come in their own way.
We come this far by faith, leaning on the Lord, trusting in His holy word. He's never failed me yet, singing, oh, 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 can't turn around. We come this far by faith. We come this far by faith. Oh, Lord, yeah, leaning on the Lord. Oh, trusting, yeah, He's never failed yet, singing, oh, 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 I can't turn around, no, 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 no. One more time. We come this far by faith, leaning on the Lord. never failed me yet. Oh, singing, oh, I think about it sometime, but I can't turn around. Oh, we come this far by faith, yeah, leaning on the Lord. Oh, I'm still trusting, yeah. He's never failed me yet, no more. Oh, I can't, I won't, I shall not. Hey, we come.
Leaning on the Lord, trusting in His holy word. He's never failed me yet.
Sing, oh, can't turn around. We come this far by faith. Thank you.
We are live all over the world. Call us right now, 773-256-2775, 773-256-2775. Listen, our founder, our president, the Reverend Jesse Lewis Jackson Sr. is not here with us today, but we feel his spirit nonetheless in this place. He is fighting for us down in Memphis, Tennessee this weekend. He is with our bishop, our CME bishop, Bishop Henry Williamson, and they are down in Memphis bringing awareness to a number of issues, particularly around health care. They're at the Collins Chapel Hospital today, and they're making a number of visits throughout the community. But before Reverend left for Memphis on yesterday, he cut a special video presentation to let you know what issues we should be focusing on. So at this time, please direct your attention to the screens as we listen to the message from our founder, Reverend Jesse Jackson.
Good morning. Wish I could be with you today. I'm really in Memphis, Tennessee today for the Tri-State Rainbow Push Coalition right here in Tennessee and Arkansas and Mississippi, where poverty reigns from Appalachia to the Delta, and yet we intend to turn this rich soil and poor people into something that's really productive. We're going to make things happen here. It's now time for us to go back to school. Remember, this parents, let's do these 5 things. Take your child to school. Meet your child's teacher. Exchange home numbers. Turn the TV off 3 hours a night and take your child to worship once a week. Just 5 basics. And then if you get their attendance, then you get their attention. And then you get the attitude, atmosphere, and then they achieve. Let's make something happen for our children. The second thing is, of course, is in Illinois, the 29th of August, we'll be having automatic voter registration. 2 million new voters, automatic voter registration. We wanted to happen in every state, automatic voter registration, and put our focus on how to turn the vote out, not just to turn voters on to the process. And we want you in your states to get it going. We're a lot of time this year in Virginia and in New Jersey. And of course, in Florida, where 1.7 million Americans have served their time, now they're trying to get reentry into the voting process. A lot of work to do. We're going to have a great meeting here at Rainbow Push today. I want to thank Reverend McGowan with his powerful, dynamic preaching self, and the others of you who are there in Chicago today. But we'll meet you next week. Today we're in Memphis, Tennessee, and the Delta of Mississippi and Arkansas. God bless you. Keep me in your prayers, and through it all, keep hope alive.
For our founder, our president, the Reverend Jesse Lewis Jackson Sr., you can follow him right now on Twitter at Rev J Jackson. You can like him on Facebook, his official Facebook page, Reverend Jesse L. Jackson Sr. Tomorrow morning, make sure you start your week off right by not only listening, but calling in to Keep Hope Alive Radio. Keep Hope Alive Radio, 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. Central Time, right here on WVON AM 1690 and iHeartRadio, and KeepHopeAliveRadio.com. Listen, as we send our children back to school, many of our students of our Push Excel STEAM Academy are participating in the 88th Annual Bub Billiken Day Parade today. And so that's what many of them are. And we're going to hear as we send them back to school, prepare to send them back to school again. Meet us here next week for our back to school rally. We're going to hear now from the leader of our Push Excel division, the Reverend Dr. Jeanette C. Wilson. Receive her warmly as she comes.
Good morning, Rainbow Push family. As we watch this broadcast all over the world, we are praying for a peaceful protest in Charlottesville, Virginia. We're praying that our president will do what he's done in other places, and that is to send our National Guard as well as send the Justice Department to Charlottesville to ensure that the citizens, the peaceful citizens of Charlottesville, those who are citizens of color and those who are not, that they might be able to live peacefully in Charlottesville. We do not want messages sent from Charlottesville to rebound around the nation that violence anywhere is acceptable anywhere. A threat to justice in Charlottesville is a threat to justice and peace everywhere. And so we are praying that cooler heads will prevail and that our president will respond in an appropriate manner. As we look at the violence that is erupting across the world, we know that there is a God, and our God is greater than the God that others might believe in. And so we are praying for peace and justice. And even as our children prepare to go back to school, it requires all of us to begin to think about our role in education. We're asking that 1,000 churches, 1,000 faith institutions around this nation would join us as we push our young people to go back to school. First thing we want every religious leader to do is to convene the parents in your congregation and ask them to take the parent pledge. Reverend Jackson covered the pledge briefly, but what we're saying to parents is you must indicate that your child's attendance at school is primary to you, and that they must attend school every day unless they have some illness which prevents them from attending. And the way you can ensure that they know it's important to you is you take them to school, particularly in elementary school. Take your child to school. Meet your child's classroom teacher. You should even go to the high schools. Make sure that you know the subjects they're taking and that the teachers know you care. Teachers teach better when they know parents are involved and engaged. I know you may not be able to go every day, but take them the first day of school. And then meet the child's teacher or teachers if they're in high school or if they're in upper grade centers. And then you should exchange cell phone numbers. Let the teacher know they can reach you if your child has some issues or some problems. Make sure that the teacher can reach you on your cell phone, the one you answer, that they might text you if your child is doing things in class that disturb the other students. And then what you want to do is make sure that at night they turn off all electronic devices, that they might be able to study for at least 3 hours when they return home from school. Children who study regularly and have a discipline of study excel in school. And you don't have to know everything they have to know. They have to know that you care that they study. You must ask them to let you see the homework. And you don't have to know how to do the homework. You must ask them to explain to you what the teacher told them and show you the notes that they took in class. Children perform better when parents are engaged in the learning process. My grandfather couldn't read or write, but he made me read to him the newspaper. That's the way he could tell if I could read. And so you don't have to be able to read, but your child does, and make sure your child is reading 3 hours every day. Children that read do better in science, math, and any of the other subjects. And then your child has to have some moral understanding, some understanding of what's right and what's wrong, not what is right in their own eyes. And so you must take them to a church, a synagogue, or mosque every week, that they might have a foundation that holds them, that guides them, that directs them. And then you need to be engaged in Push Excel, and you need to be engaged in fighting for a high-quality education. I've not seen many parents marching for school funding. I've not seen many parents marching to make sure that their school has better books than they are providing, that their school has the kind of technology that schools in affluent districts have. I've not seen you marching and joining us as we've been fighting for high-quality public education. You need to, if you're in Chicago, meet us at Rainbow Push headquarters. On Tuesday night, we are fighting and pushing each of these districts, school districts, to make sure that every child has the best quality education possible. We can't make it happen by ourselves. You should be calling your state legislators, wherever you are in America. You should know your state senator and your state representative. Ask them, how much are you spending on public education? Have you made sure that the education budget meets the needs of our students in the 21st century? How many of you have called the state superintendent or your district superintendent to make sure that they have the kind of books and technology and science and the kinds of things that affluent schools do? All you have to do is ask the questions. How many of you attend parent-teacher meetings to make sure that they're teaching at the level that your child should be learning? You don't have to know what they know, but they have to know that you care. And so that's why we're Push Excel. Push Excel has 5 A's of excellence, and we want everyone to help us push for excellence. We're getting ready to go back to school. It's not just about having a back-to-school fair. It's having a back-to-school student that goes to school each and every day the school is open. Your child ought to be waiting to wonder, when is school going to open? I'm getting ready. How do you get ready? You're reading a book right now. You're getting your clothes already laid out. You don't wake up late and then go to school and then try to figure out how to learn. Well, the first A is attendance. They have to get there to learn. You can't teach absent children. Can't blame the teachers if 50% of the kids don't show up the first 10 days of school. They've already missed almost half of the semester's worth of work. Then the next thing you want to do is, after you make sure that they're in school, that they didn't go in the front door and out the back door if they're high school students, check their attendance every week with the school, making sure your child is attending like they should. Well, then the next thing is you want to get their attention. Well, that requires the popular personalities, like Chance the Rapper. He's giving book bags. He's leading the Bud Billiken Parade. He's saying, I think every child should go back to school. So we're saying to all of the athletes, all of the disc jockeys, the on-air personalities, you should be pushing for education. You're a stakeholder in education, every elected official. You need to make sure the students in your district have 95% or better attendance. That will help the other kids say, I want to go to school. If you're on the radio every day as you're talking about playing these different records, these different raps, one of them should be Rap Your Way to School, Rap Your Way to Class, Rap Your Way to Study, 3 hours every day. Turn off your cell phone, turn off all electronic objects. And then if you get their attention, you get it through the popular personalities. You've gotten their attendance because the parents are taking them to school. Pastors, we want you to meet the kids the first week of school. Greet them at the school door closest to your church. You may not live there, but there's some kids in that neighborhood that need to go to school. They need to know the pastor cares about education. The religious leader is going to be there. And then have them show you their report card every 10 weeks or every marking period. The more of us that are watching and looking, the better they will perform. Well, how do you get a better attitude? Teachers, you have to have high expectations. Don't teach down to them. You teach to where they ought to be, not where they are. Don't ridicule them. Embrace them. Help them move to where they be. Pretend you're teaching to rich kids. The expectations of the parents, the community are high. We want the same expectation with every child so that every child knows the whole community cares. Neighbors, be a nosy neighbor. Don't see kids loitering on the street. Say, aren't you on your way to school? It's 10 o'clock, you're late. You ought to be in class by now. We want an atmosphere in the whole community that learning is expected. Whether you're in the faith community, whether you're in the school ought to be clean. It ought to look like you want people to sit there and learn. We want an atmosphere in the home. There's a study place. If you got one room, it's a corner for study. If you have two rooms, then you can put one room where they can study. Make sure there's a designated place for every child to study. And then achievement will occur because the expectations are high. The parents expect, the community expects, and children, you have to expect something of yourself. You don't have to look and wonder, how will I do well? Well, the first thing you do is you go to school every day. Secondly is you go to every class, not some classes. Some students miss the first periods if they're in high school because it's too early. Go to bed at night and get up early. Go to every period in high school, every class that you have. Be prepared for every class. Take notes in every class. And then make sure you study. You read 3 hours every night. If you're an athlete, make sure that your study time equals your practice time. Don't practice higher than you're learning, because what will happen is you won't make the college team. You may not even make the high school team. Make sure that you study as hard as you practice for whatever sport that you're participating in. Achievement is expected. You must expect every child to reach the highest potential that that child has. We have high expectations, and we believe that every child can learn. Every child may not go to college. Some children may be into working with their hands, and so we're pushing them into vocational education. We want to make sure that every child has a pathway to college or career, a pathway to success. We have high expectations. You ought to be a part of the Push for Excellence program. If you want to be a part of this movement, call us right now, 773-256-2775. We want you to take the parent pledge. We need 200,000 students to sign the student pledge. You can go to pushexcel.org, take the pledge online. School districts, principals, we want you to make sure that every parent and every child in your school takes the parent-student pledge. We're talking about a parent-teacher joint venture. We want a partnership with the schools. We don't want parents going up arguing with the schools. We want parents to go up and partner so that learning can occur. If you want to be a part of this movement, pushing for excellence, parent-teacher joint venture, students excelling and exceeding all odds, then what you need to do is call us right now, 773-256-2775. Go to rainbowpush.org and you can click on the pledge, or go to pushexcel.org and you can click the pledge. Every parent, we need 100,000 parents, we need 200,000 students, pastors, we need every church. If you're part of the 1,000 churches, you want to be a part of it, sign up right now. Call me right now. We are answering the phone, even though we're at the Bud Billiken Parade. Some of us are here answering the phones. We want you to be a part of this growing movement for change. Join us as we push for excellence. We have high expectations. And now it is my privilege to introduce one of, I think, America's greatest up-and-coming preachers. I say up and coming because he's younger than Dr. Otis Moss Jr., but he's in the tradition of the men of Morehouse. He's in the tradition of Samuel DeWitt Proctor. He's in the tradition of Dr. Gardner C. Taylor. He's in the tradition of Dr. Otis Moss Jr. He's in the tradition of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And if you want to know and hear a prophetic word, you just wait. After this musical selection, the next preaching voice you will hear will be none other than the Reverend Tyrone McGowan.
Praise is what I do when I want to be close to you. I lift my hands in praise. Praise is who I am. I'll praise him while I can. I'll bless him at all times. what you do. Why don't you lift your hands all over this house? Come on, give God glory. It's what I do.
Oh, somebody say it. Oh, praise. When I'm feeling down, I lift my hands today.
It's what I do.
When I'm going through, I just say, praise is what I do. Thank you, Lord, for the good and bad. When I'm happy or sad,
It's what I do.
when things not going my way, things not going my way, I lift my hands.
Praise is
Say, oh, thank you, Lord. I got to give the praise. I got to give the praise for what He's done. Yeah, God. Oh, so good. You're so good to me. Oh, Lord,
What I do.
when time to die and friends come apart, God is still there. Oh, I praise you. I give you the glory. Oh, it's what I do. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. Yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah.
I'll give these talented musicians another warm round of applause for ushering us into the very presence of the living God. We count it another honor and privilege to stand behind this sacred desk one more time. We give honor to our founder, our president, in his absence, the Reverend Jesse Lewis Jackson Sr., for this great opportunity to share. We thank God for all of his work, his life's work, and his life's commitment to peace, justice all over the world. We also on this day want to wish a very happy birthday to former PUSH board member Miss Dorothy Rivers. We want to wish her a happy birthday and hope she is celebrating well on today. As we look out at the landscape of our nation and our world, a passage of scripture in the Old Testament arrested me, and I will share some thoughts about a way forward in this dark and difficult socio-political season that we find ourselves in, not just in our nation, but all over the world. The Old Testament, the prophet Jeremiah writes these words, Jeremiah chapter 38. Jeremiah chapter 38, beginning at verse 6 and culminating at verse 13. Jeremiah 38, commencing at verse 6 and culminating at verse 13, you'll find these words in the New Revised Standard Version of the Bible. So they took Jeremiah and threw him into the cistern of Malchiah, the king's son, which was in the court of the guard, letting Jeremiah down by ropes. Now there was no water in the cistern, but only mud, and Jeremiah sank in the mud. Ebed-Melech the Ethiopian, a eunuch in the king's house, heard that they had put Jeremiah into the cistern. The king happened to be sitting by the Benjamin gate. So Ebed-Melech left the king's house and spoke to the king, "My lord king, these men have acted wickedly, and all they did to the prophet Jeremiah by throwing him into the cistern to die there of hunger, for there is no bread left in the city." Then the king commanded Ebed-Melech the Ethiopian, "Take 3 men with you from here and pull the prophet Jeremiah up from the cistern before he dies." So Ebed-Melech took the men with him, and went to the house of the king, to a wardrobe of the storehouse, and took from there old rags and worn out clothes, which he let down to Jeremiah in the cistern by ropes. Then Ebed-Melech the Ethiopian said to Jeremiah, just put the rags and clothes between your armpits and the ropes. Jeremiah did so. Then they drew Jeremiah up by the ropes and pulled him out of the cistern, and Jeremiah remained in the court of the guard. We want to focus on verse 11. They went to the storehouse and took from there old rags and worn out clothes. That's all I want to talk about today, old rags and worn out clothes. Beloved, black people are a resilient people. We are a resourceful people who have mastered the fine art of fashioning something out of nothing, making a way out of no way. Langston Hughes, that brilliant black bard from Harlem, put it this way: life for black people ain't been no crystal stair. So we've had to blaze a trail where there were none. We've had to build highways in the desert, take scraps and leftovers and build strong, healthy children, make bricks without straw, build mighty temples with a few sticks and a lot of determination. We've had to stick together and tie together the ragged, fragmented pieces of our bruised and subjugated human existence in order to lift even as we climb. Don't tell me what we cannot do. Matter of fact, as we send our children back to school, we need to tell our children who have been taught to systematically underestimate themselves that excellence is their heritage. It is their birthright, it is their identity and their ability. And they ought not to give in to what George W. Bush called the soft bigotry of low expectations. How can you give up on yourself when you have sprang from the loins of a mighty people, and when you know a people who are connected to a mighty God? We ought to know how to make a way out of no way. We ought to know how to make something out of nothing, because we've been doing it for a long time. Ask Mary McLeod Bethune. Before there was a such thing as United Negro College Fund, she traveled the length and breadth of this nation to raise money for a dream that eventually became Bethune-Cookman College. Ask Frederick Douglass, a clever little slave boy, who in an America where it was illegal to teach slaves how to read and write, used to share fragments of bread with poor white little boys in exchange for the bread of literacy and knowledge. Because Douglass figured out that if you can read, if you have knowledge, you will make a poor slave. And so with the bread of literacy and knowledge, he helped to not only free himself, but free an entire people hungry for wisdom. Ask men like Richard Allen and Absalom Jones, who built churches where we might worship God not in segregated pews, but worship God in spirit and in truth, that we might bear witness to the world that out of one blood, God has made all nations to dwell upon the face of the earth, that we might seek after God, that God is not far from any of us, for in him we live, we move, we have our being. And when you know that, you could do a whole lot. Well, when you get the victory on the inside, you can win the victory on the outside. And that's why multitudes of black men and women, unnamed and unnumbered, were taught in segregated Jim Crow schools. They managed somehow to nurture genius, intelligence, and talent in Jim Crow schools. First-rate students came out of second and third-rate schools. They made something out of nothing. They made a way where there was no way. My point is that we've been doing this for a long time. Matter of fact, you ought to ask the prophet Jeremiah, for his enemies had thrown him into a well and they left him for dead. I want you to know today that there are some folk who will try to throw you into a tight situation, and they will intend for you to die. Sometimes our enemies throw us into a tight space and they don't expect us to make it out. Has anybody here ever been pushed into a tight situation before? Your enemies didn't expect you to make it out alive. They left Jeremiah in a well to die. But Jeremiah was God's prophet. And because he was God's prophet, he was not one to mince words. The reason he ended up at the bottom of the well in the first place, the reason he ended up in trouble is because he dared to speak truth to power. You see, whenever you speak truth to power, you're going to make a whole lot of enemies. You see, truth and trouble go hand in hand, but it's better to stand on the side of truth, because to stand on the side of truth means to stand on the side of God. If you stand on principle, if you stand on what's right, you will make some enemies. Sometimes you will make some people who used to be your friends your enemies. While false prophets were going around promising the people of God peace that they could not deliver, Jeremiah looked upon the condition of his broken people, and he said, some of us are doing all right. Jeremiah said the 1%, they're doing all right. So some of us have good jobs, and some of us, our stocks and our investments are going up. Some of us live in good communities, safe communities. But then there are some others of us who live in endangered communities where unemployment is twice as high as the national average. There are some of us who live in violence-ridden communities where there's a lot of death and destruction. So Jeremiah says, why cry peace, peace, when there is no peace? Jeremiah said they call it a post-racial world. They call it a post-racial society, but that's not the reality for far too many people I know. He said the harvest has passed and the summer has ended, and we are still not saved. He says, is there no balm in Gilead? Is there no physician there? Is there no health care for the sick? Is there no cure for the broken? When you speak truth to power, people will become upset with you, and you will be met with opposition, and they will try to throw you in the bottom of the well. And so Jeremiah dared to tell King Zedekiah the truth. He said, look, King, the Babylonians are coming our way. I don't care what soft words the other prophets offer to you. The Babylonians are coming, and when they come, you ought not turn to your allies, because your allies can't help you. You ought not depend on your military might. You ought not say fire and fury, because that's not enough. The best thing you can do is return back to God. And that's what I hear God saying in this moment to America. America, it's time to return back to God. So Jeremiah offered words to the king that the king did not want to hear. But it was the king's boys, the king's cronies, who got mad. And they threw Jeremiah into this cistern. The Bible says that there was no water in the well, only mud, and the prophet sank down in the mud. A few years ago, Derek Bell, a towering legal mind from Harvard, wrote a groundbreaking book entitled Faces at the Bottom of the Well. And in this book, he offers a sharp critique of the deep structures of white supremacy that still plague our nation, engendering a situation where, on the one hand, you have this growing, burgeoning black middle class over the past several decades. And on the other hand, because of deep systemic structures of white supremacy embedded in the very fabric of America, a very large number of growing black middle class is also coming of age. Black and brown faces at the bottom of the well. I came across an alarming statistic the other day that says over 86% of black children read at or below grade level. That ought to disturb some people in here today. They read at or below grade level. 86% of our children. Don't you know that if that many of our children are struggling for basic literacy in the 21st century, our whole community is in trouble? That's why the student parent teacher pledge is so important. And don't you know that if black and brown communities are in trouble in a country that's growing more blacker and browner by the day, then our whole nation is in trouble. That's not a black problem. That's not a brown problem. That's an American problem. We have to lift our children from the bottom of the well. We have to demand high quality education for all of God's children. Jeremiah, a spiritual genius, was stuck at the bottom of the well. And I will submit to you today that some of the most brilliant people in the world today are stuck at the bottom of the well. And we have a stake in that, because when we lift them up, we lift ourselves up. Because the cure for cancer may just be at the bottom of the well. The cure for AIDS and HIV just may be at the bottom of the well. The cure for wealth inequality may be at the bottom of the well. Our greatest leaders who can lead us out of dangers and despair are often at the bottom of the well. So what we need today, in this moment, in this Trump era, we need more Ebed Melechs. I love this text. You know, Ebed Melech is a brother. He's an Ethiopian brother. The Bible is clear about that. It says he's from Ethiopia. The last time I checked, Ethiopia was in Africa. He's a Nubian. He's a Cushite. And he teaches us some powerful lessons that God can use you to lift someone else out of the bottom of the well. But you have to do a couple things first. The first thing you have to do is be available to God. You have to be available to God. Whoever you are, wherever you are, just be available to God. Red, yellow, brown, black or white, young or old, rich or poor, just be available to God. God will use you, and God will use you not on the basis of your ability, but on the basis of your availability. The question is not, are you able? The question is, are you available? If you are available to God, God is able to do exceedingly and abundantly above anything we could ask, think, or imagine. Whatever gifts you have, you ought to say, Lord, I'm available to you. I may not be able to preach like Gardner Taylor or turn a poetic phrase like Maya Angelou, but I care and I'm willing to serve. I may not have Dietrich Bonhoeffer's courage nor that of Harriet Tubman. I may not be able to do the political moral work of Eleanor Roosevelt, but I care and I'm willing to serve. I can't speak with the conviction of Fannie Lou Hamer, who said, I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. I can't organize like Ella Baker, but I care and I'm willing to serve. I may not be holy like Archbishop Desmond Tutu, or forgiving like Nelson Mandela, or disciplined like Muhammad Ali, but I care and I'm willing to serve. I may not have Mother Teresa's saintliness, or Thomas Merton's spiritual depth, or Dorothy Day's love, or Cesar Chavez's gentle, tough spirit, but God, I care and I'm willing to serve. God, my mind and my body may not be as swift as it used to be. I may be older in age. I may not be able to move like I used to move. My energy comes in spurts now, but when it rises up, know that I care and I'm willing to serve. Lord, I'm so young that no one will listen to me. I know I don't have a whole lot of experience, but I care and I'm willing to serve. I can't see, but I'm willing to serve. I can't hear, but I'm willing to serve. I may not speak good English, but I'm willing to serve. I may not have what other folk have, but such as I have, I give unto thee. You may not have much today, but God gave everybody some such. If I could help somebody as I pass along, if I could cheer somebody with a word or a song, if I can just show somebody that they're traveling wrong, then my living will not be in vain. Lord, I'm available. You have to be available. But secondly, you too can be like Ebed Melech. The second thing you have to do, you have to be willing to take some risks on behalf of righteousness and justice. You have to be willing to take risks on behalf of righteousness and justice. Those brothers who threw Jeremiah in the well were some ruthless, evil brothers. It takes an evil person to take someone who's alive and try to bury them alive. James Baldwin put it this way. He said, ignorance allied with power is the most ferocious enemy justice can have. That's what we've been seeing these past 200 days from the White House. Ignorance allied with power. That's what we're seeing today in Charlottesville, Virginia. Ignorance allied with power. Anybody who would attempt to bury another human being alive must be taken seriously. It's a reminder that evil is dangerous, determined, well-funded, and skilled. And it reinforces itself at every level of our society. But just like Ebed Melech, because he's not afraid to confront evil, that's why I love him. He's not afraid of this evil. He's not afraid of spiritual wickedness in high places. The first thing he does is he goes to the king and tells the king what these boys did was evil. And so he begins to say something. And as I look at the state of our nation today, I just wish more people would be bold like Ebed-Melech and just stand up and say something. I wish somebody would stand up and say something about wealth inequality. I wish somebody would stand up and say something about how the land of the free has become the incarceration capital of the world. I wish somebody would say something about universal health care for all of God's children. But he not only decides to say something, but then he does something about it. He takes some action. He says they acted wickedly and something ought to be done about it. So he says to the king, so the king says, look, man, I tell you what, why don't you get some 3 other men and you go do something about it? You see, we need more courageous prophets like Jeremiah, but we need more bold, brave brothers like Ebed-Melech. Ebed-Melech took some risks and had the courage to speak truth to power, come what may. The king says to Ebed-Melech, why don't you go get some men and you do something about it? So Ebed-Melech went to the king's wardrobe, and he didn't pull out the best rags he could find, but he went and he pulled down some old rags. He went to the back of the closet. He pulled some old rags and some worn out clothes. And that's my last point, that you ought to use whatever you have. You ought to let God use whatever God has placed in your hand already. All Jeremiah did was pull on some old rags and some worn out clothes to get him out of that pit. God can use whatever you have. It may not seem much. It may not look fancy. It may not look pretty. Just take whatever you have and put it in God's hands, and God will bless it. You know, my grandmother, she had a quilt. It's not a fancy thing. It wasn't made out of silk. It's not made out of the finest linen, but grandma's quilt is all right with me. All it is just a few little rags, and by themselves, they're just rags. But if you take something that's raggedy and put it in the right set of hands, the master quilter, maker can take the rags and sew the rags together and use them for good, so that you can endure the harsh winters of life. God can take the raggedy spots in your life. God can take the jagged edges of your life. God can take the broken pieces of your life. If you place it in God's hand, God can sew it together like grandma's quilt and preserve you and redeem you and save you in the midst of the storm. God specializes in turning somebody else's trash into somebody else's treasure. God can take the old rags and worn out clothes and worn out people and worn out circumstances and use it to God's glory. I'm through here today, but just use what you have. Well, what you have is already good enough. Jochebed just used a basket, but that was good enough to save Moses. All Moses had was a rod, but that was good enough to part the Red Sea. All Gideon had was 300 men, but that was good enough to defeat the massive Midianite army. All David had was a slingshot and a rock, but that was good enough to take down the giant Goliath. All the Selma marchers had was their bodies, a bridge, and a made-up mind, but they used it to bring down the walls of Jim Crow. Just use what God has already given you. Whatever you have is good enough to save somebody's life. I know that God can use stuff that other people throw away. The reason I know is because I too was stuck at the bottom of the well. I was stuck at the bottom of the well of sin. I was stuck at the bottom of the well of shame. Then one day a man came by carrying nothing but a raggedy old stick, and that stick changed my life. We call it a cross now, but back then it wasn't nothing but a stick. It's an old rugged cross, an emblem of suffering and shame. It was used by the Roman government as an instrument of death, but in God's hands he used what was an instrument of death and turned it and transformed it into a symbol of eternal life. Jesus took that old rugged cross, and when they lifted him up, he lifted me up. I hear Jesus saying that if I be lifted up from the earth, I'll draw all men, all women, unto me. Is there anybody here? Do you hear him saying how to reach the masses? Men of every birth for the answer. Jesus gave the key. He said, if I be lifted up, I'll draw all men unto me. I was sinking deep in sin, far from the peaceful shore, very deeply stained within, seeking to rise no more. But the master of the sea, he heard my despairing cry, and from the waters, from the bottom of the well, he lifted me, he lifted me. Now safe am I. It was love that lifted me. It was God's love that lifted me when nothing else could help. It was love that lifted me. I'm so glad that Jesus lifted me. I'm so glad that Jesus cares. Satan had me bound, but Jesus lifted me. When I was in trouble, Jesus lifted me. Glory, hallelujah. Glory, hallelujah. Jesus lifted me. Won't he make a way for you? Won't he open doors for you? Won't he provide for you? Won't he pick you up, turn you around? Say yes, yes, yes.
I'm a soldier in the army of the Lord. I'm a soldier in the army. I'm a soldier in the army of the Lord. I'm a soldier. Come on, put your hands together. I'm a sanctified soldier in the army of the Lord. I'm a sanctified soldier in the army. Hey, I believe I'll die in the army of the Lord. I believe I'll die in the army. I'm a soldier in the army of the Lord. I'm a soldier in the army. Got my war clothes on in the army of the Lord. Got my war clothes on in the army. Come on, clap your hands, everybody. Come on, put your hands together. If you're in the army, come on, clap your hands, yeah. Hey, I'm a soldier in the army of the Lord. I'm a soldier in the army. I'm a soldier in the army of the Lord. I'm a soldier in the army. Get my war clothes on in the army of the Lord. Get my war clothes on in the army. Get my war clothes on, yeah. Get my war clothes on in the army. If I die, let me die in the army of the Lord. If I die, let me die. If I die, let me die in the army of the Lord. If I die, let me die in the army. I won't get wounded in the army of the Lord. I won't get wounded in the army. I won't get wounded in the army of the Lord. I won't get wounded in the army. If I die, let me die in the army of the Lord. If I die, let me die in the army. If I die, let me die in the army of the Lord. If I die, let me die. I'm a soldier in the army of the Lord. I'm a soldier in the army. I'm a soldier in the army of the Lord. I'm a soldier in the army. Come on, put your hands together, everybody. If you mean to fight in this battle, come on. Put your hands together. Let's declare this, everybody. Hey, victory, victory shall be mine. Oh, victory, victory shall be mine. If I hold my peace, let the Lord fight my battle. Victory,
If I hold my peace, let the Lord fight my battles, victory. Oh, victory shall be mine. Victory shall be mine. If I hold, victory shall be mine. I get joy when I think about
What he's done for me.
I get joy when I think about
What he's done for me.
I get joy when I think about
What he's done for me.
I get joy,
What he's
yeah.
done for me.
I get joy when I think about
Done for me.
oh, joy. So much joy,
What
yeah.
he's done for me.
I get joy when I think about
What he's done for me.
Hey, you don't know like I know.
What he's done for me.
You don't know like I know, yeah.
Done for me.
You don't know like I know that. Oh, you don't know like I know what it's done. You can't try to let me tell it.
What he's done for me.
Oh, you can't try to let me tell it.
What he's done for me.
Oh, you can't try to let me tell it. Yeah. You can't try to let me tell it. Yeah.
That's what he's done. 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 He brought me out. He opened doors. He made a way out of no way. That's what he done for me. Come on. That's what he done for me. That's what he done for me. He delivered my mind. He delivered my heart. That's what he's done. I'm so glad. I'm so glad. Come on, put your hands together.
Amen. Give it up for our music ministry today. They are few in number, but they are powerful in spirit, and they have lifted us on today. Listen again, we want to invite you back next Saturday. Next Saturday is going to be a great day all day as we again send our children, send our families back to school the right way. So be here at 9:30 for our rally, and we'll be here all day giving out free book bags, free supplies all day right here, 930 East on 50th Street. Listen, our leader is not here as you see, but we still want to give him a good report when he returns to us on this week. And so we're going to ask our officers to come now as we will raise our collection. We do have our members of our finance team here. If you do not have cash but have a card, we have a swiper here for you. But as the message today was, give your best gift, whatever you have in your hand. It may not be much, but we should put it together. God will use it for God's glory. So wherever you are, just come in the aisles, come to my right or to my left, and let us be a blessing to our organization. We do not get any government grants for our travel, for our research. We do it off of memberships. And if you are not a member, you can raise your hand. We'll make sure you get a membership envelope. We live and we survive off the contributions of dedicated, faithful members like yourselves.